Road Dogg joined Corey Graves on his After the Bell podcast this week and had some interesting comments. Interesting in how honest he was, almost refreshingly honest, especially for somebody on the inside, as inside as he is in WWE, but also alarming in how honest he was on some of these things. First, he said that he will be 10 years sober in October. Sober in October. That rhymes. I guess if he ever writes a book, I just gave him the title for it. But that's awesome. That's awesome news. He had a lot of substance abuse problems before. You know, one of the many guys back, especially during that whole late 90s period that had, just drug problems and just various issues. And he has stayed, clean now for a very long time. He says he still attends meetings on a daily basis down in Orlando, right down the road from the PC. So good for him. Hopefully we never have to see a Dark Side of the Ring special on the Road Dogg Jesse James. So that's a cool thing. But then he got into some of the WWE, kind of the way they do things down in NXT and at the PC and promos and things of that nature. And it was fascinating to listen to. But on the scripting of promos for talent, for example, he talked about that. And all of the micromanaging that the company does. This is what he had to say about that. He said, there are some talent nowadays that you can trust to fill in the blanks. And there's definitely some talent that you cannot trust. So as far as the micromanaging goes, I was guilty of that for sure. People up the ladder from me are too. But it's because of that. There are so few that you can just go, yeah, I can let him go and he's not going to say the wrong thing and he's not going to do the wrong thing. It's actually better if I just let him be him or I let her be her. There are so few people like that. Now, I can understand his point. WWE is a publicly traded company. We've also seen a lot of WWE talents go on social media over the years and post some really stupid shit. Right? We've all seen it. Uh-oh, so-and-so's just tweeted again. Now what have they said? Now they went and put their foot in their mouth. How many times have we heard about dumb wrestler tweets? Twitter is one of the worst things to happen to the wrestling business. Some wrestlers have also, on the other hand, though, used it to get themselves over. But more often than not, I feel, it has been a tool of destruction. The destruction of their own careers. And so now imagine if someone like Road Dogg went up to, Jackson Riker, I'll use him as an example, and said, hey, here's the main point. You got to go out there. You got 6 minutes. Good luck. Here's a microphone. And he just sent him out there, right? There's no telling what might come out of the guy's mouth. And you can substitute anybody in that spot. I just use Riker as he's the first name that came to mind because he was in the news this week, getting raked over the coals. But there's no telling what might come out of the guy's mouth. You put a live microphone in his hand without much in the way of guidance. I'm not even talking about dropping the F-bomb or anything like that, which I'm sure is a concern. Like, oh, what if they cuss? But it doesn't have to be curse words. If they go out there and they get lost, or they go out there and they think, oh man, I got to say something. I got to say something witty, to get myself over, or I got to get myself noticed. I got to get people talking about me. And then they make some kind of social statement, or they make a tasteless joke, that they think is funny. That's going to blow back on the company, and it's probably going to be the end of their career. It always makes me think of Abraham Washington. Remember him? Remember the guy they named after 2 presidents? Because this was during a period where their naming of folks was just out of control. Fucking Eli Cottonwood. Need I say more? That was a rant on the Sound Off from many years ago. The NXT names. Those were the days. But it makes me think of him. It makes me think of Abraham Washington and the Kobe Bryant rape joke that he made on TV. That was the end of Abraham Washington. You have not heard about him. You have not heard from him since. WWE had to go scramble. They had to go issue an apology. He made the company look terrible. I mean, the company's been making itself look terrible for years, but he made them look worse, and he got fired over it. He lost his job. And he actually was a good talker. That was kind of the sad part about the whole thing. He was, at the time, I believe, right, he was the manager, right, or the agent for probably the primetime players. And he was a very good talker. He had that gift of gab. He had a charisma about him. I think he had been a wrestler, but they were using him in the managerial role. But he improvised. And he went too far. And also, that was right around the time I think that Linda McMahon may have been running for Senate. That probably didn't help. I mean, he would have gotten in trouble no matter what. But that probably had as much to do with it as anything. Just bad timing. He improvised and he paid the price for it. So I get what Road Dogg is saying in that respect. I understand why they may feel the need to do that. But what does that say? Think about this. What does that say about their talent roster or the way that they teach them and coach them at the Performance Center, that you have somebody like Road Dogg, who is deeply embedded in that system, right? Very close with Triple H, works with him, Shawn Michaels. You know, and at one time was like the lead writer even for SmackDown. Now he's with NXT, but, you know, again, deeply embedded behind the scenes in that company, openly admitting that there are very few talents that they can trust to go out there and not fuck up. That is a very distressing thing to hear. I know they have promo classes at the PC because people have talked about them even after Dusty Rhodes passed away. I don't know who teaches them now. Maybe it's a rotating staff that does so, but they have promo classes at the PC. I don't know what the curriculum is. I've never sat in on one of those classes, so maybe they're already doing this. But if that's the case, then they need to prioritize teaching these people how to think on their feet, what to do, what not to do when you're out there without a net. If you ever get lost, here's a device, one of these mental devices that you can use. Like there have to be ways that you can try to kind of coach and teach people the do's and don'ts when you find yourself with a microphone in your hand standing in the middle of the ring. When you're on live TV, because not everyone is going to be good at memorizing lines. You will forget your lines from time to time. If you're Randy Orton, you simply walk over to Sheamus on live TV and go, "What's my line?" And you're good to go. But for the rest of them who are not Randy Orton, you're not going to be able to walk up to your opponent on live TV and ask them, "Hey dude, what's my line?" Why does it seem like this is not a priority in this company? What does that say about the way that they are teaching these people when it comes to promos? Because overly scripted promos are one of the worst things to happen to wrestling in the last 20 years. I was happy to hear Drew McIntyre recently. He did an interview and he said that he has been given the leeway largely to cut his own promos. He will sometimes be handed stuff and I don't know if he'll throw it away, but he'll kind of just say, you know what, I'm going to make it my own. We need more people who are given the leeway or have the courage to say, hey, give me the shot here. Let me make this my own. Don't give me this pre-written, like inhuman sounding content, robotic content or dialogue to recite because I'm going to sound like a fucking idiot. Let me do my own thing. For McIntyre, I was happy to hear him say that. Not everybody is going to have the kind of leeway that Drew McIntyre has. I'm willing to bet that guys like Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, they probably also get that leeway. They're also very, very good talkers. I'm sure they don't have to recite scripted promos. They'll have their stupid buzzwords like everybody does. Make sure you say WWE Universe. Make sure you say, whatever the fucking buzzword of the week is. But they're probably left to their own devices to go out and say what they want to say, as long as they hit the main points. That's the way it should be. But to hear right from the horse's mouth that they have such little faith in their own talent to go out there and talk without screwing up, that should be alarming to everyone who hears that. That is, at least partly, you have to say, a failing of their own system. He also said this. There's a lot more lately, especially with promos. They're including talent. John Cena used to sit in the writer's room for 8 hours. He would say, hey, what do you think about this? And then spit out a line. And his promos were gold, right? Because he spent the time. A lot of wrestlers will get their promo and go, okay, cool, yeah, I like this. All right, well, it's your character. If you're a wrestler and you have a 10-minute segment where it's a promo and a match, and you don't take the time to make sure that it's the best it could possibly be, that ain't on the writer, that ain't on Vince McMahon, as much as you would like to put it there, that's on the talent. And agreed. The talent should want their promo, or their segment to be the best that it can be. And maybe they do have some men or women on that roster who are content to just take what they're given and just do the bare minimum and just do what they're told. And not do anything to try to make it better. But, to say that ain't on the wrestler. And it's not on Vince McMahon. It's on the talent. How deep in the bubble do you have to be? Here's a 10-minute promo and a match. Here's how we want it done. Maybe you get a little bit of leeway. Maybe you don't. I guess it depends on who you are. If Road Dogg is to be believed, they obviously have little faith in a lot of the people who work there to ad-lib on their own. So right there, they're already constrained by what's being given to them because they don't trust them. Well, how are you supposed to build trust? How do you get to a point where you can build trust if you're not being given, the leeway to go out there and kind of do your own thing? I mean, you don't think that there are talents who do try to make the most of what they're given and it still sucks because they're limited in what they can do with it? I mean, bad creative is still bad creative. Bad verbiage is still bad verbiage. Do you hear some of the promos that they script for these people? I mean, a lot of you don't. I know that because a lot of you don't even watch WWE anymore, so I'll tell you. I hear it, and it sucks. No human being on the planet, not named McMahon, would talk the way that some of these people talk on TV. And it has a lot to do with the words that they are forced to memorize. So to say, well, that's on the talent, don't blame the wrestlers and don't blame Vince McMahon, kind of passing the buck. If you give me a pile of shit and you tell me, hey, make it the best pile of shit that you can possibly make it, no matter how good that pile of shit may look, if I stick my finger in it and I draw a smiley face, at the end of the day, it is still a pile of shit. To listen to him speak, you would think the writers and Vince McMahon are blameless. Completely blameless in this. We just don't get it. They are completely blameless when we see things on TV that are no good. Or that don't sound any good. Now, that being said, if you have some people who are content to just coast and they're not actively trying to get better at their promos, then yes, they also bear responsibility in that. I am not saying that they are blameless. My whole point is that nobody is blameless when we see awful things like this on television. You have to spread the responsibility around, and to make a comment like that and say, oh, I know everybody would love to just put the blame on Vince McMahon. But Vince McMahon, if he didn't have a direct hand in the dialogue, and he probably did, knowing how hands-on he is with a lot of this shit, he certainly approves it. Everything runs through him. But even if that wasn't the case, the buck stops with him. You take responsibility, brother. It's your show. It's your show. You've created this system. This is the system that you helped create. This is the system that you wanted. This is the product of this system. I understand with the wrestlers, though. I understand that everybody is mostly concerned about going out and having the best match and doing the highest dive and what can I do in the ring. But look, if you get a contract to work in WWE, you should know what you're getting yourself into. And if promos are not your strong suit, then you should work to try to improve that element of your game, because we all know how promo-heavy WWE is. Just watch any of the shows. NXT less so. There does seem to be more of a reliance on the in-ring stuff, more than probably Raw and SmackDown. But anybody who watches WWE can see how promo-intensive it can be. If there are people who are not working to improve that, then yes, you're not going to get opportunities that you may feel that you deserve. You have to be willing to put the work in. I don't think anybody would argue otherwise. I don't think anybody would debate that. But let's not pretend that the creative forces behind the scenes don't shoulder some of that blame when it comes to the things that we see on television. The talents are only as good as what they're given to work with. And then he had this to say about Adam Cole, who he singled out as his favorite NXT star. It says Adam Cole is the most professional, the most talented. He just gets every aspect of it. He can cut a promo. He's one of the guys where you just go, I need you to do a minute, and that's all you say to him. and he gives you a minute of hiccupless verbiage. I've never heard that before. I've never heard it put that way before. Hiccupless verbiage that just makes you go, okay, that was perfect, thank you. Every single time. That's Adam Cole in a nutshell. He's also a great worker. He has great psychology. I know some people are going to disagree with that. We'll get into that. But he said he's a great worker. He's got great psychology. Man, if he was Karrion Kross's size, he would be the Universal Champion right now. And if he wasn't, I would be wondering why. He is a dream superstar. I'm surprised he admitted that publicly. Not that Adam Cole was his favorite, but the whole thing about, well, if he was Karrion Kross's size, he'd be the Universal Champion or the WWE Champion right now. Surprised to hear him put it that way so bluntly, but I think we all kind of knew this mindset was still there. That unless the crowd suddenly grabs a hold of you the same way they did somebody like Daniel Bryan and kind of forces the company into putting the belt on you, if you don't look the part, it's going to be a lot harder for you than it would be if, you were 6'3", 240 pounds. And there are a lot of smaller guys on that roster. More so now than ever before, I think, in the history of the company. I mean, even if you took 205 Live away, you still have more smaller wrestlers, physically smaller, on the roster today, on television today, than you did 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Absolutely. But I still believe that if you have the size, not even the talent necessarily, but if you have a certain look and you have the size, you've got big muscles, you're always going to get more opportunities. You may not succeed. We've seen a lot of duds come along who, got a big win on TV and then they were never seen again. I always think of, what's his name, Jackson Andrews. I mean, there's probably a whole list of guys like that. But you're always going to get more opportunities than the guy who's 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", 180 pounds, 190 pounds, unless your name is Rey Mysterio. Even if that guy has talent that the other person doesn't. It has always been a struggle for smaller talents. It's always going to be. That's not going to change. It will always be a struggle, certainly in this company, so long as the mindset is what it is in WWE. The reality is, he's not wrong. If Adam Cole looked like Karrion Kross, but with the promo ability and the in-ring ability that Adam Cole has, Vince McMahon would have had the WWE title on him 2 years ago. He would never have spent as long, if even a single day, in NXT. It would have been like AJ Styles. They would have called him right up. So in that regard, he's not wrong. But if I'm Adam Cole, I know there's been talk lately about Adam Cole's contract coming due possibly in August. He was asked about that this week in an interview. He did not give a direct answer about it. There's also a report out there that Cole signed a new 3-year deal just last year, so who knows what the truth is. I got a scoop for you. Adam Cole either did or did not sign a new contract last year. There's breaking news. Okay, so we're right back where we were, meaning nobody knows a fucking thing. But whatever his contractual situation is, if I'm Adam Cole and I'm hearing those comments, while I appreciate the fact that I'm Road Dogg's favorite, that is setting off some alarm bells for me. And it has to be, on some level, demoralizing for him to hear. Oh, we love this guy. He's the best. He can wrestle. He can talk. He can do it all. What do you call him? A dream superstar. But man, if only he was 6 inches taller. Look, Adam Cole is not a big person. He is not a physically imposing person. I don't know what they bill him at. They might bill him at 6 feet. If they do, that's complete bullshit. There's no way he is more than 5'8" or 5'9". Under 200 pounds. There's no way. He is not a muscle guy. He does not look like a guy that's going to impress anybody because, oh, he's cut, he's ripped, he's got big muscles. That's not Adam Cole. And yes, if you are not a WWE fan and you took one look at Adam Cole, you saw him in an airport, you saw him walking down the street, you saw him in a department store, you saw him at a restaurant, you would never think that this man is a professional wrestler. And in fact, Adam Cole admitted as much when he was on Edge and Christian's podcast a couple of years ago. He said because of his size, many, many times, he is asked, hey, do you work in the WWE office? He said the worst are the TSA agents at the airport. When he was the North American champion in NXT, the agents would take the belt out of his bag when he was going through airport security. And they would ask him, they would go, what's this? And he would say, oh, that's a championship. And they would ask, for what? And he would say, oh, for wrestling. And they couldn't believe it. They would look at the belt, they would look back at him, they would look back at the belt, they would look back at him. They would have these bewildered looks on their faces. He would tell them that he worked for WWE, and they would automatically think that he worked in the office for WWE. And then he would have to explain to them, no, I'm a wrestler. I actually wrestle for them. So Road Dogg is just saying what they're really thinking, what the company is really thinking. I'm not saying that I disagree, that at first glance, Adam Cole does not look like your prototypical professional wrestler. He doesn't. But neither does Daniel Bryan, neither does Sami Zayn, neither does Kevin Owens. But what do they have that help get them over? In the ring, they can go, and they can talk. Owens and Zayn are better at promos than Bryan is, although Bryan has gotten better over the years. He still doesn't even consider himself a great promo, but he's a lot better than he used to be. But he's not Kevin Owens and he's not Sami Zayn. But they are all good at talking, and they're good at getting you either to hate them or to love them. Adam Cole has that. Adam Cole has all of those things. He can do all of those things. He can do them well. So I think despite his size, I have to believe that despite his size, I think he'll do well. Does that mean that he's going to be the Universal Champion or the WWE Champion? Maybe not. Maybe not. But that doesn't mean he still can't do well on Raw or on SmackDown. History is on his side. When you look at the list of former NXT champions, okay, now he is the longest reigning NXT champion of all time. If you look at that list of all the former NXT title holders, most of them have gone on to have real success on the main roster. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Nakamura, Drew McIntyre now, Aleister Black, he's well on his way. The NXT title actually largely has a good track record, Bo Dallas aside, largely has a good track record of guys who went on to have success at that Raw or SmackDown level, at least for a while. Cole is somebody who does not embarrass the company whenever he opens his mouth. He's a credit to it. He is a credit to the company. And he has all the tools except for the size. There is nothing exceptional about the way that Adam Cole looks. There is nothing exceptional about the way that he dresses. There is nothing exceptional about the way he carries himself. That is his biggest flaw. But I don't think it is a fatal flaw. I think he can overcome it. To hear Road Dogg say it out loud, though, has to be demoralizing. But if you are a smaller guy, no matter how hard you work, you will always have to work twice as hard to get your spot and to keep your spot. It all boils down to, what do you look for as a fan in your pro wrestling? I would pose this question to all of you. Are you the kind of fan who looks for believability above all else? The guy has to look the part. He has to look like he can legitimately kick someone's ass in order for me to buy into him as a threat or a champion or a contender. Is that what is most important to you? There are smaller wrestlers who have an MMA background or who train MMA, or someone like Chad Gable, who was an Olympian. He was an Olympic wrestler. Although his whole gimmick now is how short he is. Adam Cole is not one of those people. Adam Cole is not known for his MMA skills. He's not known for being a fighter. He's not, his great amateur wrestling skills. He's not a body guy. So you're going to have people who look at him and think, I can't buy this guy in a top spot. This is a joke. Or are you on the other end where, as a fan, It's just important that you be entertained by your pro wrestling. And great matches and great promos, regardless of how big or small the person may be. What do you look for in pro wrestling? That's a loaded question. And I'm sure I'm going to get a dozen or more different answers. I mean, look, remember, even someone like Ric Flair, and this goes to the whole thing about how subjective it all is, and it's all a matter of perspective. Even someone like Ric Flair, who people think is the greatest of all time, or one of the greatest of all time, gets a fair amount of hate. Even people like Bruno Sammartino, people in the business, legends in the business like Bruno Sammartino and Bret Hart and Ole Anderson. Well, I mean, Ole Anderson hates everybody. But these are Flair's contemporaries. Would talk about, oh, he can only wrestle one match. Ric Flair was the shits. He was the most overrated star in the history of wrestling. He only could wrestle one match. Bret Hart and Bruno said the exact same thing. He only knew how to do one match. And then he would do the goofy stuff like the Flair flop and all that kind of stuff. And all he did was chop, 82% of his matches and stuff. I think it's a generational thing with these wrestlers. Karl Gotch once called Harley Race a clown for working the style that he did and coming off the top rope with the diving headbutts. He called him like kamikaze man, he called him. Coming off the top rope like a kamikaze pilot with the big diving headbutt. Killing the business, he said, is what Harley Race was doing. He said nobody would ever do that in a real fight. This guy's a clown. You look at the way that somebody like Jim Cornette today looks at the Young Bucks. That's the way Karl Gotch looked at Harley Race 30 years ago. Today with people like Adam Cole, I hear it all the time. The old Kevin Nash vanilla midget argument. All these wrestlers with their dives and their 10,000 kickouts. And I will say, I do wish they would tone it down with all the kicking out of finishers in Adam Cole's matches. And it's not fair to just single him out because I feel like everybody does it now. We see it in AEW, we see it across promotions all over the place. But it's also noticeable in Adam Cole's matches as well. It has infected the entire wrestling business, and I wish it would stop. That and dives in every single match has got to go. And look, the kicking out of finishers and stuff, I'm not saying that it has to die where it just doesn't happen. I just think it's overdone. Like the dives. A well-placed dive here and there is cool. It's a cool visual. But when everybody starts to do dives, it means nothing anymore. First time I saw Luke Harper do a dive in a WWE match, I said, well, we've officially jumped the shark now. It's one thing to see the Usos go flying over the top rope, or Rey Mysterio or somebody like that, but then you got Luke Harper doing dives, and I'm trying to think. There are other big guys, too, who had no business doing moves like that. I mean, Undertaker at least would save it for WrestleMania mostly. Like, you didn't see it in every single Undertaker match. All that shit is completely overdone. But anyway, that's a whole other rant. But again, I leave you with this. Do you believe that Adam Cole will be champion on Raw or SmackDown one day? And do you believe Adam Cole should be champion? That's two different questions. Do you think he will be, and do you think he should be? Sound off and let me know.